So we wanted to have an open discussion session for this call and sort of use the opportunity for people to be able to compare notes, talk about how COVID-19 has affected their centers, and describe, some of the things. If you look in the call doc, you can see there's a number of different things that we think might have been impacting people's centers, and if you do see those things, feel free to add into the table, or if you see you've had other things happen, also feel free to fill in that table as we go. So for the folks who've joined since 12, can you see the chat has the document in it, or do I need to keep posting that call doc? Like John Huffman, I'll call you out, John.
Don't see it.
You don't see it? Okay. I will I will post again so people can see the. Okay, there we go. And I'll keep posting as our numbers increase. So anybody have particular stuff to discuss based on COVID-19? I would say for Cornell, our big impact has been switching to work from home. We have got somebody in the IT organization on site who's able to handle stuff within our data center, and then we've had a couple of people traveling into campus to handle stuff. For the most part, I mean, we're in IT, we've adapted pretty well. We have a couple of odd things happening, like people taking Zoom calls from their car that has unlimited Wi-Fi where their house doesn't. But for the most part, I think our groups have been adjusting very well. I think being, my sort of peer group on campus is research center directors, some of whom have labs with experiments going on, and those folks are, they seem to be in more of a pinch than we are. But we're all feeling this a bit.
So Rich, I'll actually add something.
Yeah.
Something that we've done here, which I thought was interesting. It kind of ties into what you're saying. Our networking people have been working with the local high schools to enable EduRoam at the high schools, so people who can't get access, high-speed access at home, are actually going to the local high schools so they can get onto local Wi-Fi there and authenticate through EduRoam. And so that's something they've been doing throughout the state. A little bit easier in Delaware because it's not that big, but that's been a pretty big success here.
That's a really interesting tactic. I had not seen that, but that's pretty cool. Other folks who have had impacts, maybe broader institutional things to deal with. But I mean, we're dealing with a hiring freeze and a travel freeze, and after we are able to come back, we will have to have travel approved by, in our case, the vice provost for research. Same thing with purchasing. There's definitely going to be a lot of slowdown looking at things moving forward in that vein. Are other folks experiencing similar amounts of lockdown finance-wise for the near future?
Hi everyone, it's Jane. Sorry,
Hi Jane. Sounds like your audio is pretty garbled. I'm not sure if that's a connection thing or what.
sorts of. Is this better?
Yeah, it's way better. We can hear you now.
I'm trying to use my new AirPods. We're having some restrictions on Zoom too, that we're not supposed to be connecting to our video just through phone, but I didn't get that done. So thank you everybody for coming, and I'm sorry I'm late. Financial stuff for us, we are definitely. I happen to be in the middle of a pilot that is ending June 30th, and so we were waiting for the approval from the Office of Research of whether it was a go or no go. And because of all this, it's been kind of held up a little bit, and they're not sure about the funding and different things like that. But I think it's going to go, but that has been kind of an issue for us. And we definitely are going to we have hiring freezes in place. So my pilot was for the HPC cluster, which I have 3 part-time people working on it, and the go was to get actual positions. So even it's hard enough to hire people in these kind of roles at the best of times, but I am concerned about what this will look like trying to hire new people, even starting July 1st.
Do you have an exemption policy for hiring freezes?
We've not gotten anything yet from our president about how, even that we're having a freeze, but I hear rumors that it's coming on sometime this week. So we'll find out. I suspect IT will have exemptions, so I don't think that should be a problem, but I'm not sure.
I asked that question. This is Lisa from UCLA. Our hiring freeze does include quite a significant list of possible exemptions, and one can, write a justification and build that argument that this is a mission critical position, that this is a difficult hire, and we've been working on it, the funding is available for it, and so on. So I'm hoping that your institution will do similar.
Yeah, that's good to know. Even for me going forward, if they don't have something like that, I don't know if it's the same way at all your institutions, but if I can point to another institution that is doing something differently, a lot of times they will come back and say, okay, this might be something that we can look at too. So I appreciate that information.
Jane, this is, excuse me, this is Tony Elam at the University of Kentucky.
I recognized your voice.
We have policy procedures in place for exemptions, and we have to write up the justification for that, but we are allowed to make certain hires. And in particular, if it's a research project and we have established funding, that's not going to be an issue. But we do have an exemption process in place. We're trying to hire, for instance, some cyber engineers for our cyber team award. And we are writing up the exceptions, and we are going to be getting approval.
That's good to know. So I see people are writing in the document. Did you all have problems getting in it? Is that what happened in the beginning? I saw that Dana always saves us in these back-end technology misses.
Yeah, I'm the Google Doc guru.
So did you talk about the resource prioritization already?
No.
We did
No.
not, no.
Okay, I didn't know if we would go down through. I'm sorry, Rich. Rich and I we didn't meet about this beforehand. We're kind of off the cuff people, but basically the list in that table are all things that I've experienced. So that's how I started it. But but I do think, and Rich probably already said this, but I think, at least for me, as I'm creating my center, I did not have a disaster recovery plan, even including like succession planning. And, we had to kind of talk about in my department, who's the first point of contact, who's the second point of contact. And I know if some of you guys are like me, where really I'm the only full-time employee, and so you kind of have to think about those things. But I thought this information that we're putting in here, others could use as their disaster recovery and response plans. We had in our notes, and again, we're a pilot. We had that I put out a response, a COVID-19 response document. We had to do those for all of our different resources in IT, and I had stated in there that we would give priority access to any COVID-19 because that's what we were told by our president to do. But I wrote that without any plan of how that would happen. So that was something that I had to kind of get together with some of my faculty partners and say, when we did have one, we kind of ended up doing something very fast. And I got some advice from the Ohio Supercomputer Center from Dave Hudak, who said, they just do it. They had a director's discretionary process that is basically, they save some resources for that. We're not big enough that we can ever save anything, but so we did put that in place. So I thought that was for the smaller places like mine that are just starting, to have something like that. We actually had another instance, and we have said we try to meet researchers' needs when they have a deadline and something like that. So we had kind of done that a little bit, but this was a little bit more important, and we had to document it and send it to the president, and it's part of the plan and the whole university response. So did anybody else have anything that they had to stop other people or preempt or all those horrible words? No.
We got a lively crowd today.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to preempt folks, but we did reach out in terms of letting people know that they could use our resources for activities that we'd figure out a way to fast track them to get them running on resources. And also I did send a note over to our instructional technologies folks to say, since we've got an on-prem cloud environment, to say we could help out with that. For the most part, they were pretty solid. So we didn't have a call to assist so much there, but we did want to make sure that folks knew that they could make use of our resources.
Yeah, and sharing, I've done a lot more sharing of we have the Ohio Supercomputer Center, but also the bridges and Jetstream, trying to, share those resources like for for teaching classes, VMs for teaching, courses online. That's a different use that we hadn't started really marketing for our computer science departments and whatnot, but they are looking at that. Somebody said they had to shift resources to shore up remote access, promote and train on remote access tools. Yeah, that's been a big change for us, and pause some HPC infrastructure projects. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we just ordered some hardware, and I'm wondering when it comes in. I don't know when it's going to come in, but what that's going to do to our project plan about getting those things added. Whoever put that in there, did they want to talk about what they had to do, what projects they had paused? Okay. Well, thanks for typing it in anyway. That's good. VPN, we had some VPN issues. Somebody said they put together VPN server to handle it, the new unexpected load. increase the IP addresses. You know, all these things will be good documentation for as we go forward if something happens again. More documentation is being created in my IT department. I think it's pointed out a lot of places that that we don't have good enough documentation. So we've been working on that a lot too. Equipment deliveries and delays, people have said. Training and workshops. Anybody have any experience, problems with Zoom? Are people having changing?
If the person who's using Teams wants to talk a little bit about what they're doing, I'd like to hear more about that. I was the person that said we had an in-person lunch and learn program that we were going to run out through June that we've now pushed off to at least the fall, if not later. But I'd be curious to know what people's experiences are who moved online.
Yeah, that's me using Teams. Our IT department was transferring our VoIP to Teams prior to this outbreak. So we were moving in that direction anyway. They took away our desktop telephones. And so for the people in central IT, at least, as a precursor to the rest of campus. So we were already forced to use Teams for our normal telephone conversations. And then when this happened, then I set up an HPC cluster team for campus. I already had a listserv for our HPC users, so I strongly encourage them to move to join the Microsoft team for HPC users. And maybe a fourth of them did. We already had in-person classroom lab style workshop scheduled once a week, and we just we moved immediately to a Teams meeting, sent out invitations via the emails in the team, and we've had a low turnout, maybe 7 people, a big turnout, maybe 15 people joining us on Microsoft Teams. It's worked out actually pretty well for us because we can share our screens. Generally, we have a short PowerPoint prepared for each presentation and then followed up by general questions. Sometimes we do online demonstrations of job submissions through the Teams meeting. If it was up to me, I think I'd prefer Zoom, but having used Teams now several times, it's functioning well for us.
You know, the problem I have with Teams, we have office hours where it was just, we have a faculty enrichment center and people could just drop in or they could say they're coming, but we don't, the whole university is invited. So it's not like we have, I guess, with Teams, I think they have to be a member of the team to attend unless you send them, I guess, the link. I don't know. I haven't. Do you know anything about that?
It was difficult to get that figured out. If you send an invitation to the team, it doesn't actually go out in their emails. It just goes on a Teams post, and not everybody pays attention to their Teams posts. So I figured if you use Outlook and make the reservation make it a calendar event and outpost as a Teams meeting, and then exit the calendar invitation and then come back to it to edit it, then there's a link there that you can copy and paste and put it in an email.
Oh, yeah.
So once I had that trick figured out, then I just put it on the listserv, and that's been working okay for us.
Chat, this is Marina Kraiva from Iowa State. Was there any issues for those people who use Unix, Linux?
I'm not, I just don't know that anybody was using Linux.
Okay, thank you.
I use the Teams Linux desktop client, and for my use, which is files and chat, it's been fine. I haven't done calls through it yet, so I can't say one way or the other on that.
Thanks.
And if they aren't using Teams, do they have to install it? Because that's another, nobody wants to install anything, which I guess you have to with Zoom and with the other ones too, but.
You can access Teams through a browser, but the connection is so slow that you don't actually see video. You see like a photo of the person every 2 minutes, and the audio quality is very poor. So to use it functionally, they have to download the app.
Okay. I'm just going to make some notes about that in our. What about student workers? Anybody having problems with that, or do you have different policies on student workers? I think ours, no undergraduate is allowed to come on campus, but they can still be working, but they have to be actively doing projects, not just, we're not just paying them to not do work, which of course we use a lot of student workers, and none of ours went home. We also are not allowed to have any that are working remotely from another country. But has anybody had any problems with their students or any particular issues you might want to alert people to that we can be thinking about?
For us, it's just 2 students don't reply to emails, but the third one is working well remotely, and we are happy with him.
Have your universities announced that summer is going to be online too?
At Iowa State, the first half of summer will be online.
Mm-hmm.
Jane, this is Tony again. For us, with our student workers, this semester we had 4. They're all continuing to work on our projects. We have a weekly Zoom meeting with the students. Excuse me. And, everything's proceeding well. Just have the kids work remotely, and they're continuing to support the projects that they were assigned to.
Basically, same here. I have 3 grad student assistants, and they're working remotely. They've been instructed to email me when they sign on every day, and where they're at. And for example, are they in the library? Are they at home? Are they in a residence hall? And we're meeting twice a week. One meeting is, I call it a water cooler meeting, where we just sit and talk about how things are going. And the second meeting is a status meeting, where they tell me what they're working on, if they're having problems, what they plan to do next week. And in other words, if I have assignments for them, that's where the assignments happen. It seems to be working fine.
Yeah, I should also mention that 2 of those student workers that we had both had summer plans initially. For instance, one was going to be going to Oak Ridge for the summer. Obviously, those kinds of summer plans for at least 2 of the students have changed. And in both cases, we're pleased with the work that the students are doing. So we're going to just keep them on, as long as they would like to continue working. And we'll find, either continue the project they're on or find other interesting work for them to do.
Yeah, we've had the same. Our student one of our undergrads was going to go to Spain for study abroad. We also had notifications from, a lot of our co-ops and our engineering, and actually UC, University of Cincinnati, is known for our co-op programs, and most of our programs have co-ops, and students are encouraged or required to do them. And a large number of their co-op or internships were canceled for the summer. So we're trying to find work for them within the university, if at all possible. But then, you know, we're also probably going to be having budget cuts ourselves, so that's not necessarily going to happen. So I feel it's very sad for the students. Yeah.
This is Cal Fry up at Case Western Reserve. We've sent most of the students home, of course. We're working on accelerating our clinical students so that they can graduate and go off and help with the epidemic. Our health education campus has been taken over, and the Cleveland Clinic is looking at it as a space for an extra 1,000-bed overflow if they need it.
Wow.
You know, that sort of thing. And we are virtual through the summer.
Mm.
I don't know about our student workers. Our group doesn't really work with a lot of students, and I haven't been keeping up on what some of our other folks are up to.
Mm-hmm. So do you all anticipate you will be working remotely for the summer also? I just heard this morning from our CIO that we probably, those of us that can work from home, they will probably keep home all summer. And I was wondering if other universities are doing the same, or organizations are doing the same sort of thing. Like if you don't have to be on campus, try to really restrict it, even though they might open back. Well, we're still considered open, but probably even if the state of Ohio opens back up, we won't be going back until probably August, if then. We may shift to almost 100% remote.
I think we'll take a very cautious approach for a while, and some of us are approaching the demographics of interest, and so some of us are going to be a little more reluctant.
Yeah. I can't decide if it's good or bad.
Agreed.
I think that's the hard part about all this. It seems, I always said I wanted to work from home, but only when I want to work from home.
Our university just announced yesterday that all summer classes will be online.
Yeah, I think for us, earliest would be second summer session. So right now, we're not seeing anything until then. But I had heard also that I think Boston University was looking at January 2021 as the next time where they'd have on-site classes, which is a long way off.
They're seeing a bigger impact than we are in Ohio.
True. Yeah. And I guess that's, we'll see what happens there with by state, I guess, is how this is going to be happening. So I'm distracted by your background. It's awesome.
Oh, Musée d'Orsay in Paris.
That's good. Yet another thing to like about Zoom over WebEx.
Can I ask a question from another point of view? What positive things have come from this? I know that one of my teams does statistical consulting and has walk-in sessions, and they shifted to doing it via Zoom with breakout rooms, and frankly discovered that it's easier, the clients like it better, and they're considering continuing it even when we go back in person. And I'm wondering if anyone else has any other kind of positive stories about this.
That's a really nice story, Lisa. I think that's good to see. For CAC, one of the things we found is I know our consulting team has switched to doing like a daily stand-up model that's a little different than something they had done before. And just 5 minutes, what are you working on today, what are your blockers in Slack, and they report that it's been very helpful to them to keep things oriented and sort of everybody in a rhythm of checking in. So that's been really useful within our team.
That's a good point. I think I'm at the Claremont College's library, and we serve 7 different colleges. So we're sort of dealing with 7 different ways of handling telework and IT access and 8 different VPN systems. And so in order to pay some of our students, we've had to figure out remote work plans. Like Pomona College, for example, is paying everybody regardless of if they can work or not, but not all of the colleges are. So we're trying to keep everybody teleworking who wants to be teleworking. So it has forced us to sort of move ahead on some projects into like, okay, what's the remote piece of this that we can do? We've got some metadata projects with some of our digital collections in the library. We've got some programming projects, and it sort of pushed us to think about how can we partition this out and sort of make an agile, in big quotes, plan for folks to work on this remotely and check in. And I think if we hadn't had this situation, it would have taken us a year to sort of wrap our heads around the necessity of that. So that has been a positive thing.
John Huffman here at the University of Delaware. One thing that we're seeing is we didn't get much of a drop off of users on our central systems. In fact, we saw an uptick of utilization. And so this has been really good to go to the administration and show them why having these sorts of resources centralized is important, because it didn't have much of an effect whether people were at home or at the office. That in fact, it's kind of the opposite, is they may not have access to their own computers, and so they're turning to us for those resources. And so it's helping us make the argument for putting more funding into those sorts of resources and to encourage people to look at those sorts of resources and help people be more aware of those resources as well. And one of the things we're also seeing is that we're actually seeing more people interested in investing those resources, because money they might have had for other projects they can't spend now for various reasons. And so they're actually looking at potentially buying into the central resources where we have a condo model. And so we're actually seeing more interest in those sorts of collaborations than we had in the past.
That's a good point. And when this first happened and everything was slowing down at the university, we were up and running. We didn't, the cluster didn't slow down a tick. It was, almost everything's done remotely on the cluster anyway. We were being central IT, had resources and got up to speed on online meetings pretty quickly. And I started sending emails out right away that, hey, we're open for business, up and running, use the cluster. We're here for you. And I think that made us look good at a time when other parts of campus were temporarily at least slowing down.
It does feel like this is a good time to sort of capitalize on that. Researchers needing hands-on to stuff, transitioning them to not having hands-on stuff and being good with it. Like that's if we can make sort of strategic moves and help people out, so we could win hearts and minds. I know on our campus about, you don't need that cluster in your lab. You can get a lot of work done centrally.
Chet, how often are you reaching out to your users? I'm torn between sending them out regular emails and not pissing them off.
We sent out one thing and said, we don't expect an interruption of service. If anything changes, we'll let you know.
Chet, how about you? How many times have you reached out?
About 2 emails on the listserv per week.
Okay, thanks. I think I'm somewhere between the two of you. Okay.
Our systems at UK utilization has definitely increased. So since the researchers have been put at home, they've been doing a lot of submissions, and the job submission rate's gone up, and our systems are pegged.
You know, our CISO always says, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So I like the positive things. And we've kind of seen the same thing. Our Office of Research put out a notice about people not being allowed to come on campus, and people had to submit basically risk assessment forms to come on campus to do their research even. And so, and then there was a list of people they had to prioritize or make a case for why they had to come. And one of the cases that the Office of Research did not allow was access to HPC in decentralized areas, because we do have our resources. So we have seen an uptick also. And I've sent, the only emails I've sent, I sent the first one, and then I send whenever I get things from like Exceed or from OSC offering other services. So I try to make them, and then I send out an announcement that we're switching all of our, or we're still having our training sessions and workshops and how they are and where they are. So
We've been in the middle of a centralization project trying to pull servers out from underneath desks and into the data center. And we have had a little bit better luck recently saying, look, lights out management is a really nice feature.
Yeah, their grad students went home, so they don't have anybody turning their stuff on or managing it. And yeah, somebody said researchers are more interested, concerned about data management and QA/QC with more time to work on it in front of their computer. You know, this is a good time probably to remind our researchers about good data management processes. That to me brings up storage, which I don't know, we haven't really touched on storage too much in this group, but this has pointed out to our leadership the need for central storage also, because people had things stored in their offices, they had things stored in various places, and then they can't get back to campus to get to them. Or they can, I'm sure they are, but they're not supposed to be. You know, they're putting people at risk. So we're gonna put out something that reminds them. Of course, we don't offer any storage yet, so I can't do that. That's one of our things we're trying to do, is get some storage. But
one of the positives is the fact that we have a lot of workshops and conferences that are moving online right now that are free. And I've been encouraging my staff to pay attention to those and to participate as much as possible. This is a good time. You know, a lot of times you may be able to afford to send people to these various workshops and conferences, and now it's a great opportunity for them to participate in things that they may have wanted to in the past but didn't have the opportunity for time or money reasons. And so there's a lot of opportunities right now to increase training and education that I think that everyone should be taking advantage of.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, seeing ISC go to virtual, and I think either low or no cost, was a very interesting move that I heard about this week. As the counterpart to SC, it's sort of always there. I've never been, but it seems like it would be interesting to see what's coming through now if it's accessible.
When is that, Rich?
It's usually in July, I believe. It's like it's like a week before PERC generally. I don't keep too close tabs on it, but I do know a lot of people go to that.
I know there's discussion already about supercomputing conference, but they did just send out all the deadlines for papers and whatnot, which I guess that will still be that if they have it on. I will be so surprised with the large number of vendors that support that conference. I'd be very surprised if that happens remotely. But you know, I guess rather than not happen, Yeah, the Exceed training, like their HPC, I can't remember whatever that training is that they offer, that we offer sometimes, but now they're switching that over to Zoom, which I think is actually another good outcome of this. I think they're going to be using Zoom, but before you had to have, like we jumped through all kinds of hoops to offer those workshops, which they're great workshops, but you have to have like a video. I can't remember what it is. It's something that we used to use, like when you had the old video systems, conferencing systems. So they're switching to Zoom, which will be interesting. But also they have a great YouTube library of all of their previous workshops. And I sent those out to our grad student listserv at UC because, again, like you said, now's a good time for people can get training. And so if you haven't looked those up, you should look them up. And there's a big data one. I've watched all of them, even though I'm not a technical person in that role, just to have the background of what my users are doing and what my technical people are doing. So,
which workshops are those?
I'm sorry?
What workshops are those that you're talking about?
Yeah, let me see. It's the NSF Exceed HPC something. I'll put a link to it here. Let's see. I know, and maybe this is a good time to talk about this, but I don't know if Dana or Rich or I saw Lauren's on here too. The spreadsheet that Christina put together, that's not about training, that's more about organizations and whatnot, isn't it? But that maybe we need some place where all these workshops and training and free stuff is. We could put that together.
One of the things that we've done at UCLA, before this, BC, we had a workshops portal where all of the campus partners who did training sessions aggregated the information, so users at UCLA could click in and say, pick a choice. I want to learn about deep learning or whatever it was. And it was always geared to in-person live training on campus. And when this happened, we quickly rejiggered it so that it could take pre-recorded things. So I will look at the Exceed ones. We don't have Exceed up there, but we have things from the NIH BD2K series. We have things from NVIDIA. So we rejiggered it so that we could do pre-recorded training sessions as well. And our team kind of curated those and posted them. So hopefully people will link in and through to us. So if any of you are interested in looking at it or giving me more suggestions for pre-recorded content, it's at workshops.ucla.edu.
That would be great. Let's just see that.
And feel free to, obviously people from other campuses can look at all the pre-recorded things. So if we can build up that library, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it would.
Jane, to answer your question about the spreadsheet that the people network coordinators have been putting together, and you mentioned Christine in particular, it has organizations, online events, like event series, media series, and discussion groups. But it sort of is explicitly not including like, one-time single topic training here kind of stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's more sort of like general resources that have communities or sets of materials that might be useful.
If you write anything on your computer,
sorry,
you need to
I'm looking
get
for my YouTube thing here.
And I can share that in the chat. This is something that one of our people network coordinators, actually in our data facing track, put together and has been floating around some other sort of volunteers to CARC leadership, but she's planning on sending that out to the entire people network so that other people can add to it so that we can crowdsource. and just see what people think of it and how it's useful. It might be good input to say that whether it belongs here or not, it might also be good to gather resources for training. I think some of the discussions that we've had, even in communities outside of CARC, I guess, that I've been a part of, is that with trainings, they can very quickly become out of date. And so any listing that amasses all of them is very difficult to keep up to date. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. Just that there may need to be mechanisms that help identify when things were last updated or something like that.
Right, yeah, okay. Yeah, I know, because dates change, right, all the time. So I put the link, oh no, I didn't. I put it just to Rich. I found the YouTube link for the Exceed Big Data training video, and then you can go from there, and they have their own site. And I looked for it on the Exceed website, but I couldn't find it. So, but those are great. Those are great. I highly recommend you take a look at those if you haven't been to any, because they've in the past they could only be, you had to go in person to a location that was offering it. So it was much more limited. So I was happy when they put them out onto the recordings onto YouTube. They're very interactive. If you can have them host on your campus, they are great to host. We've gotten so much, I mean, we have had some excellent response with those training courses, and we've been doing it for 2 years now. So, and we provide lunch for the attendees, and you know, we all know that providing food helps to bring people in. I'm going to add these links too. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about today? The positives were great. The ArcGIS issues, faculty were tied to lab-based ArcMap desktop platform. Some IT centers are building remote desktops, which we did too. You know, trying to get things shifted to cloud-based, it sounds like.
Jane, something occurred to me, and I don't want this to seem like a shameless plug, but the Open Science Grid is supporting a variety of COVID-19 projects, and one of the services we can offer is for campuses to backfill their local cluster and prioritize that for COVID-19 research. Some of this is coming directly to the Open Science Grid through OSG Connect, which is our service available for individual researchers. And then some of it's coming through our participation in the National HPC Consortium, sort of instigated by NSF, but including cloud providers and Exceed providers. So it is one way if campuses are interested in supporting COVID-19 research to be able to do that, and where it's still sort of backfill on your cluster, or you can turn it up so that it's more than backfill. It's up to you. And if anybody's interested in that, you can get in touch with me directly. I'm one of the people on the team coordinating those services.
That's great. You guys had one of the fatalities of COVID-19. It was my first hit when your all hands meeting couldn't happen because of it.
Yes.
So I'm sure that it was disappointing to me, and you know, we still want to get more involved.
Yeah, it's currently rescheduled for August, but we'll see if that happens. it may just have to wait until next year.
Mm-hmm.
We did an all hands meeting by Zoom and liked it so much we scheduled another one for next month.
And who
Yeah,
is
we
all,
haven't talked concretely about, you know, if we have to cancel the one in August or replace it virtually, with, you know, what would we do? But at this point, we're just keeping our fingers crossed. And
on Monday at UCLA, we had a town hall for the IT people and had 220 people in attendance.
wow. I think IT people prefer not to be together in person sometimes. You know. Yeah, I'm the chair of our research computing committee in our IT governance, and we had the largest turnout via WebEx yesterday. We had 48 people attend, and actually, I think we only had one person missing, and unfortunately, he's in the hospital with COVID. But it was pretty remarkable, and we always have that as an option for people to attend remote, and we usually get a handful of people that attend remote and a handful of people that attend in person, but this time we had everybody. So you know, the other thing that we're using when we're talking about, my whole team, we switched to using Planner in Microsoft Teams to keep track of our tasks. And you know, I'm also a project manager, and you know how it is. It's like project managers are the worst at managing their own tasks. So we've been wanting to take the time to do that, and it's really been helpful to have that, even though because before we all just were remote or locally sat together, so we didn't really need to do any of that. But now it's much easier for me to create my reports and do my documentation and whatnot. So we were forced to use a tool to keep track of our tasks and communications, and that I hope we'll keep doing that as we go forward.
Okay. If nobody's got anything else, I think we can give you guys 4 minutes of time to make it to your next Zoom. Thanks for coming, and thanks for contributing. We really appreciate it. And if you've got ideas for further discussions, let Jane and I know for sure.
Yep. Keep filling it out if you have anything else you want to add. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you all.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.